Well, to the Florence Nightingale of Victoria, the immensely gifted Peta Credlin. Florence Nightingale, of course, was the lady who came to prominence during the Crimean War. She organised care for wounded soldiers. She was the lady with the lamp. Well, this is a different kind of lamp, but Peta Credlin has certainly shone the torch on the appalling processes at work in Victoria, which have led to the deaths of hundreds of people. The question that has to be asked now is whether the Chief of WorkSafe Victoria, Colin Radford, is going to take the Coate inquiry evidence to the next stage. As I've said many times, Andrews himself has altered the Occupational Health and Safety Act to provide for industrial manslaughter if an unsafe workplace has resulted in death, and the penalty could be up to 25 years in jail. Radford has phenomenal powers to look at all cabinet ministerial documents, all ministers' emails, all public servants' emails, all notes, all phone records. He's got extensive powers of cross-examination. Peter, thank you for your time. Thank you for what you're doing. Apart from anything else, Peter, is this bloke going to act?
Alan, I have got tears in my eyes listening to that soldier. I am so moved by what he had to say, and I cannot believe that Victoria is led by a government, 14, 15 ministers and public servants who've never worn the uniform, who can't remember what happened a few months ago, and we've got soldiers in this country, veterans, with that sort of injury, and just asking for recognition and support. Yet we've got these clowns in Victoria, can't remember, don't know who made the decisions that have cost 800 dead. We should be ashamed. If that's the level of public discourse in our country. Yeah, well, we should be ashamed. And I think Victorians, I think anyone now, we've seen what our state governments are like in a time of trouble this year. Some have performed magnificently and some haven't. And I say this as an absent Victorian. I've been away for a long time, 15, 16 years interstate. I'm home now. And as I go around the state in looking at this issue of hotel quarantine, and I lift up a rock and another rock and another rock, what I'm finding under these rocks. So the guy you're talking about there that's running WorkSafe, he used to be a press secretary for the Premier. Yeah. Now, do I think he's up to it? Premier. Probably not. Labor Premier. Probably not. You've got former chiefs of staff of Labor Premiers who are now assistant commissioners in police for diversity and inclusion. You've got everywhere you look in the Victorian system, it's like an octopus with all its tentacles. It's people that owe personal allegiance to Daniel Andrews. It's not just Labor appointments. Both sides of politics put their people out there. It's not that. It's worse than that. These are people who personally have some loyalty to the Premier, so that if the system, which is supposed to be a check against the power of the executive, the power of an all too powerful leader, that system that has the integrity or should have integrity in our democracy is compromised in Victoria. This is Fitzgerald stuff that I've uncovered in Victoria, Alan. This is Fitzgerald inquiry stuff. This is corruption at the very top to the very bottom of Victoria.
But this inquiry's been going on for months. This inquiry's been going on for months. This bloke, Radford, has heard enough information for his determination to have already had begun into relation to ministers and public servants as to whether or not they should be recommended for prosecution. It started many months ago. Robert Gottliebsen rightly said if this had been a chemical explosion or a factory owned by a corporation with many deaths, he would have been using his powers from day one.
They are relying on the fact that we are a beaten people down here at the moment in Victoria. We've been in lockdown for 23 weeks or something. At midnight tonight, there is just only very minor changes. We're not fooled. We're not fooled by the changes. We're grateful for just this modicum of liberty, but we know we're so far behind the rest of the country. Now, there's been jubilation about finally getting to this milestone, but I tell you what, the Premier hopes that we will all slide into Christmas and forget about this year, and there is a real risk that next year, when people like me might be complaining about what went wrong and the scrutiny on the individuals involved, that we will just be seen as the ranting sort of Murdoch press, or I'm just got an axe to grind because I'm a former Liberal staffer. That's not what it's about. Victorians and everybody else in the country have to stay the course, because if this is the new low of integrity in politics, in government in this country, then God help all of us, Alan. Everyone should pursue the truth.
Well, we will never forget, and you won't and I won't, that the government's job was to insulate Victorians from the danger of becoming infected. And those people responsible for managing this, mainly quarantine, would need to have careful training and supervision. None of that happened. And the risk wasn't just that germs would escape in the air, the virus is out there, but if workers became infected, they would spread the germs throughout the community. All of that happened. So there have to be prosecutions, and you and I and others are not going to forget any of this. Hundreds of people have died. Andrews abandoned cabinet responsibility, abandoned accountability.
He rejected the army.
Yeah.
He had the army.
Yep.
He rejected the army. We are the only state. I mean, this is a perfect example of what you should not do. If you look at every other state, we went it alone. You know, the causation in legal terms is very clear, and once it was out of hotel quarantine, all the contact tracing systems in Victoria, which are antiquated, failed. That's the problem. You know, New South Wales had an outbreak. It had Ruby Princess, but it has been an exemplar once it dealt with that exit point from quarantine. Once it dealt with that, its contact tracing system has stood up to scrutiny. Not so in Victoria.
Absolutely. Well, Peter, great to talk to you. Now, I have to tell you that Peter is doing let me just check the exact, so I get this right. Let me get
Sunday night.
Sunday night.
Don't miss it.
Sunday night, Peter. It's a special investigation, Deadly Decisions, Victoria's hotel quarantine catastrophe. It'll premiere this Sunday night. That's November 1 at 8 o'clock, Australian Eastern Daylight Saving Time, here on Sky News. Peter Credlin. Thank you, Peter. Thank you for all you've done.